Hi everybody. I want to tell you a little bit about this leg of my trip. I'm calling this leg of my trip Friends and Waterfalls. So for the last 10 days or so, I've spent it mostly with other people and most of the time exploring waterfalls. So as I mentioned in the last video, I was hooking up with Jed and Brenda, and we were going to visit our friend Charlie Borland out in the Bend area. And we stayed with Charlie for about 3 nights, I think it was. We slept in our vans in his front yard, basically, and we went out exploring the area around Sparks Lake and around Bend, and we went to some waterfalls and had a good time. We had a great extra bonus. We were sitting around Charlie's talking about people we knew. We were talking about George Lepp, who also lives in Bend. And if you're not familiar with George Lepp, I would look him up. He's a legendary photographer. So we called up George and his wife Kathy, and we met them and had a great dinner. So that was fun to see them all again. And then when I left Bend, I went to my friend Lou's house in Wilsonville, and we went hiking and looking at waterfalls. Mostly went to Silver Falls State Park in Oregon, which is the biggest state park in Oregon. And I think we saw 9 different waterfalls and took about a 7-mile round trip hike. And that was a blast. And I spent 3 nights at Lou's, and then I went from Lou's to my friend John's up in North Bend, Washington. And we've been hiking around looking at waterfalls as well and catching up. So these are all people that I've known, some of them for at least 45 years or so. John and I go back to college together. Lou and I go back to the early days in Yosemite together. Brenda and Jed I met early 80s easily, and George Lepp probably around that same time frame. So it's been a really great, fun experience, but this video is kind of a jumble of things because I really didn't have a plan when I started out videoing. So there's just clips from the different various aspects of this last 10 days that I'll be showing, and some of the photographs that I took during these 10 days. I also want to mention, while I was at Charlie's, Tamron had a first ever Zoom gathering of all the Tamron Pro Team members. And during that conversation, I learned that there was an adapter that I could get that would allow me to use the Tamron Sony E-mount lenses on my Nikon Z camera. So when I found out about that, I contacted Tamron after the meeting, and Tamron sent me the 17 to 28 2.8, which is at least a quarter of the size, maybe even smaller than the 15 to 30 that I've been carrying around. So I'm going to leave my 15 to 30 2.8 here at John's in Washington and pick it up on my way home. And I'm just going to be taking this 17 to 28 2.8. It's really light. It doesn't have the bulbous front. I can use all my filters and everything, so I'm excited about that. And I also am going to leave behind my trusty, it's a little scary doing it, I'm leaving behind my 150 to 600, and I'm taking the new Tamron 150 to 500. I am giving up 100 millimeters in focal length, which I'm kind of leery about a little bit, but this is a whole lot lighter, smaller, and when I did some field testing, it appears to even be a little bit sharper than my 150 to 600. So it's the 150 to 500 with the Sony E-mount lens, and I'm using a Megadap adapter, allowing me to use the Sony mount lenses on the Nikon Z body. As you're probably aware, Nikon hasn't allowed too many third-party lenses to be released yet. Tamron does make the 70 to 300, and I did a video for Tamron on that lens. You can find it on the Tamron website. And I love that lens, and I have it with me, but that was the only native Z-mount lens that's available right now. So it's great to be able to use the new mirrorless lenses on my Z camera, thanks to that Megadap adapter. So I'm just taking, with me on the trip now, I'll be taking the 17 to 28, the 150 to 500, my 70 to 300, and I'm bringing my 90 millimeter macro lens from Tamron, and I'm also bringing a Nikon 24 to 120 mid-range zoom lens with me. So those are the lenses that I'm taking with me as I leave for Alaska. And actually tomorrow I'll be heading into Canada, and it's one last friend stop. I'm going to go visit Barry Haynes up in Gibson, British Columbia, and spend a couple of nights there before meeting up with Jed and Brenda in Clinton, British Columbia. We're also kind of watching what's going on with the wildfires because they're really close to closing the Alcan Highway. There's a fire within 2 kilometers, I think, of the highway right now, and it's in a prepared for evacuation order, that stretch of the highway. So we may have to alter our route and take the Cassiar Highway up into Alaska, which was going to be the route we were going to use for our return. And we really wanted to be on that route later in the year so we could make some side trips into Hyder to go look for fishing bears. But we'll have to see how all of that plays out. So hopefully this video makes some sense. I'm going to be showing you some clips from some of the hikes that I've taken. I also stopped and I did spend the night after I left Lewes. I went to an area on the north side of Mount Hood and I photographed the Milky Way over Mount Hood. So I'll be including some of those images and a little bit about that stop as well. So I hope you enjoy the video, and we're just moving on the travels here in Wanderer. So I'm hiking with Charlie Borland, Jed Manwaring, and Brenda Tharp. And we're up here on the Ray Atkinson Memorial Trail. Most of you probably don't remember who Ray Atkinson was. We're here at Sparks Lake. But if you're an old-time nature photographer, you will definitely remember Ray Atkinson. For the rest of you, look it up.
Bigger than the Hilton River Way, huh?
Well, here's my campsite for the night. And the reason I picked this spot, so very close to the fire road or fire service road, is because if you look a little to the right, you'll see what my view is. And that's Mount Hood. And I'm going to photograph Mount Hood tonight. And I'm going to try to photograph the Milky Way over Mount Hood. So I've got my camera set up right now on my regular tripod. And it's aimed at Mount Hood, and I'll turn it on and you get an idea of what the view looks like. And I think this is about 85 millimeters worth. And I think that's the same millimeters that I'm going to use to photograph the sky, maybe a little bit wider. And I'm going to be photographing the sky, setting up that same camera, most probably that same lens, even though it's an f4. But I'm going to be tracking and using my Polaris tracking head, my Benro Polaris. I'll show you that one in just a second. So now I have the Polaris set up outside. This is my Benro Polaris tracking head with the Astro head. Really can't set it all up until I put the camera on, so I'm going to wait and get my blue hour shots of the mountain first. And then I'm going to move the camera over to this tripod, get it all set up, get it calibrated, and then hopefully photograph the Milky Way this evening. So that's the plan here.
So it seems like this portion of the trip has been friends and waterfalls. So this has been great. Just hiked up the Twin Falls with John. We did Snoqualmie Falls yesterday. Did a lot of waterfalls with Lou. So it's a great adventure. The only thing I shot besides waterfalls in the last couple of days has been the Milky Way. So pretty good here. Oh, there we go, there's my face. So, hiking along the trail, waterfall hunting.
So this is Twin Falls, where we just hiked to. It's quite a walk. We actually walked right up around that tree you see on the left, so we had a great view looking right at the falls. I'll post some pictures of that. So I'm using this as an excuse to stop and video, but we're really just catching our breath. You can see we're a little tired. Well, that pretty much concludes my lower 48 adventures. Tomorrow I hope to cross the border and get into Canada. So hopefully that won't be too exciting and smooth sailing. I'll let you know how that goes. And then I'm off to see my friend Barry on the Sunshine Coast of British Columbia in the town of Gibsons. And then from there, it's going to be starting the real adventure. So I'm really looking forward to it. I hope you are too. I hope in the future videos, I'm going to try to be a little more narrative for you and take you on my adventures from a little more first-person point of view. I think that'll be easier to do once I finished getting my friend visit out of the way. So I hope you're enjoying my travels so far and that you get to live a little bit vicariously through me and my travels. So remember, if you like these videos, please click on the subscribe button and subscribe. Tell your friends too. And I'll see you in Canada.